line. Can you tell me a bit about, so right now you're investing time and relationships with Microsoft to build the processing power of this data. Is your plan to continually work with a third-party outsourced partner, or are you looking to build some of these resources in-house within your own organization?
Well, when it comes to that part, we continue to say to be an expert in producing Coca-Cola, but not the IT. So in that sense, when you ask about are we going to do the in-house talent as well, I would say we would. I would say no, we're not looking into that direction. We look into the partnering with the other party. You know, let's say 3 parties, something like that, so that we can have Coca-Cola, we have say third party, and then a Microsoft as 3 parties to make this continue to happen in the futures. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so that's going to bring me on to some to a follow-on question with Kim, if I could just ask him. So we've just heard from Chandy that there are these emerging new trends, emerging new needs for high-quality talent, be it in-house or externally as a third party. Representing AmCham, who has a breadth of different organizations with a variety of skills, what advice would you have for our audience as they consider adopting new digital technologies, as they kind of consider automations and adaptations to their organizations? What advice might you have for some of these companies as they move towards this new exciting future of digitization?
Thank you so much for that question. I would say looking across the market when it comes to digitalization in Cambodia, my advice would be to make talent development a CEO level priority. Yeah. So most successful organizations in the future will be developing their workforce skills by leveraging the power of technology and linking that capability development to the business value. So perhaps look at moving away from what we call an event-based learning, where you get a group of people together, train on a certain skill or concept, get a certificate, and they all go back to work, right? So being that the only approach to development, I believe we should look at shifting that model or the development model to incorporate technology, tying online learning with courses that are tailored and specific to the individual for development. That with the simulations that truly immerse the learner in performing their jobs, as well as being able to leverage what they learn. So look at the 2 components as together versus separate, as learning as one piece and then your job as another piece. So how do you tie that together? Yeah, because a lot of time, because everyone's in a role to help contribute to the business value. So therefore, the development should also be an extension of that. And I believe also, with data analytics, we can be much more precise now about the capabilities needed to build out in the organization. So courses and capability building development, like I said, should be much more tailored to the individual, captivating to the learners, and therefore becomes more effective. And so that would be my advice if we're looking at, digitalization, and then how to develop your employees to leverage technology in the workplace.
And so as you were speaking, you reminded me of the old adage which goes, leaders are readers, right? And so the tangible link between self-development and personal development and professional development. And you mentioned here that training and talent development should be a CEO level priority. And then you talked about linking it to business value. Could you perhaps drill down on, for our audience's sake, as to how some of the CEOs listening might reconcile or put some metrics and meat behind the value, the often long tail value of training the staff, and how it relates to the investment spend versus the reward they're going to get from investing that into talent development?
Thank you for that follow-up questions. When I talk about making talent development as a CEO level priority, is that a lot of time CEOs are focused on many different things, right? The bottom line, the sales, but not necessarily on developing people. So this is where I think, like your position as the chief of HR and then Chandy as well, is being able to correlate your function as the head of HR to the business overall value and what is the business goal. And what I mean by that is, how do we go and find the talent that will support that business value? And for those that we have in our company, what are the skill sets, what are the capabilities we need to build out in order to support that long-term goal the CEO have, the business value that he or she's trying to drive, right, for the company. So that's what I meant to be able to link those two together. So it can't be just HR's in charge of looking for people to put in a role, but yet not really understanding that specific role needs what kind of capability to support the long vision company. And you've mentioned something about investment, right? Development is an investment. And I think we can get onto one of the other questions, what are some of why isn't it happening, with development being at the forefront for companies? It's because development is a long-term investment of your people. So it's not like sales where we could acquire a customer and now we can count that as a profit. It doesn't happen overnight. So we have to think of any type of investment into developing people as long-term investment, and the returns will be, multi-years down the road, not within the month that you train your people, perhaps not even within that year, right? Because we also want to look at training them for future capabilities and not necessarily just the one that we immediately need. So that's what I would say.
Thank you for building on that answer. I really appreciate that. Your answer, if I can go on to you, Ioin, that's a really interesting segue, I suppose, onto some of the points you made in your talk earlier about how the working world is changing, right? The last 18 months have created all kinds of challenges, but also interesting opportunities. And so we often hear a lot of people talking about the impact and the negative connotations of COVID. As you prepare your students for the working world, as you prepare them to get ready to step into this new world, what positive opportunities do you think the global pandemic has created? And how should companies listening be preparing for the new normals of a post-COVID world?
Oh, thank you for that. Before I answer your question, just want to say what you said is music to my ears, because as for a number of years, I always joke with people that it's almost like we want the magic pill, that give me the one workshop or the one thing that is going to solve all my problems, but there's no such thing, right? And so how we worked has changed in the last 18 months, and I think it creates interesting opportunities for more remote work. And it creates interesting opportunities where Cambodia, so as we've seen in the next 5 years, around 11.4 million new data specialists are required all over the world. So it creates interesting opportunities in the sense that Cambodia supplies some of that, some talent, because as we work remotely, it's not stopping anyone in Cambodia to work remotely for organizations in the local regions, or even like Australia or US or the UK and so on. And in this changing world, we're also looking at where organizations are addressing efficiency and effectiveness, and there are smarter ways to work. And I think that Cambodia has the opportunity to leverage their data, to leverage their digital skills, and to move from a low-skilled economy to move the economy from low-skilled labor to a high-skilled services export market. And this is something that we keep asking ourselves, so we keep saying this within the organization. We often wondered, can Cambodia do for data science what India did for IT, what India did with IT? Can Cambodia do the same with data science? So when we talk to our graduates and organizations, we often tell them that we would like Cambodia to be recognized not just for Angkor Wat, but also for the data skills. So yeah.
Thank you, Yoni. Sheanghai, you've been sat there very patiently, and so if I can move over to a question for you. So both Kim and Yoni touched on some really interesting points. Kim was expanding on the idea of forward investment in pursuit of corporate gains and business value. And Yoni was talking about the idea for, the really, the new kind of wave of skills that are going to be required. And I want to touch a bit on the work that the Royal Group has already done and the work it is looking at doing moving forwards with DataU, for example, and Mekong Big Data in particular. And so I'm reminded of the fact that the Royal Group have always been a pioneering organization, right? They've always been eager to try and innovate in new things. And in fact, the Royal Group was one of the earliest participants in the DataU program. And I'm reminded of the fact that, through that, within just a few months of placement, we noted that, on just one of your group companies, there was a 14,000% return on investment on just a single individual as they helped create new processes and programs in your organization. So some really interesting value was created from the work you have done. But what I'm much more interested now is, as you look forward, as we think about this evolving world, there is this constant need for highly skilled and senior staff, as well as the need for developing your own internal staff. And the thing with internal staff development is you can teach them really great and powerful and future-forward skills, but they'll need to develop commercial experience in order to have the weight of knowledge to accelerate an organization. So can you tell me a bit about the work you're doing now or the projects you're looking at with Mekong Big Data and DataU in particular to bridge the gap between the immediate need for skilled senior talent whilst also in parallel developing talent for within your organization, your group itself? Can you talk a bit about this kind of initiative that you, Mekong Big Data and DataU are working on?
Yeah. Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, for Royal Group, what we have done, and I think several of our company have been working with DataU, right, in developing the talent, especially on the data science, right. This comes from the, our chairman vision, to contribute to the we call the the economy of the Cambodia, right? So the Royal Group, put strong focus on this, and part of that, like automations or data analytics, is the skill set, that will contribute to the economy, right? So what we have done, this is what you have mentioned is just one example, right? We have done a lot, and it is about weighting between the, the pro and con, right? So certain area where we need the business to, roll out quickly, right? So in that sense, we need to invest immediately, like maybe import the talent, right, to work on. And in other area where, we can, steadily, have the resource, right, develop, then we invest like what we have done with DataU as well. Okay, so uh, as we can see, the project that we have with DataU. So right now, data analytics is one of the prongs, I would say, strategy that we need to have in order to support, all the business. If you look at all of our business right now, everyone, HCO are talking about how can they improve their business, and a lot of things is related to data, but we do not have the people, to help us, utilize or do the data mine. We have, Royal Group have like million of data, but we have not been using the data, enough yet. Meaning we have not explored the data yet. So part of the program that we work with DataU is just the start, right? We build the specialist, import specialists to work on that, but it is not long term, right? And it's costly. So this will be the initiative that for long term, we believe that the local talent will took over from the import resource, to build this space.
That's really interesting. So your model, if I can just summarize for our audience, is speed of execution means that actually sometimes it makes sense to import often expensive external talent, as we're seeing at CocaCola with the Microsoft partnership. Getting things done means that actually sometimes bringing in the outside talent is a necessary step. But as you mentioned, long term, it's not a sustainable model, right? It's a very costly and the cost continue to grow. And so having a way in which you can develop your own internal talent, which will over time replace some of that expensive external talent, is a really smart and innovative approach and methodology. Can you give our audience maybe one or two kind of pieces of advice on how they might go about doing the same, taking the same approach and methodology? So as ahead of HR, as you were planning out your next 3, 5, 10-year kind of horizon on your talent needs, how were you thinking about that migration from expensive external resource to more long-tail internal resource and knowledge retention? What kind of things do you have to think about? How do you plan your strategy? Can you just give us a bit of insights on how you might help somebody do the same?
I think the work have already been started with the Royal Group, and especially I would like to raise the case of Wing, right? So we have built, because we have many businesses under the Wing. Right now it's the Wing divisions, right? We have the bank, we have the e-commerce, right? We have the payments, right? The fintech side. So a lot of these business need the data, right? To monetize, right? So we have built a department where they focus on, mining the data, right? Work on the data analytics, and we have import, the specialists from, outside to build that functions. But at the same time, we have used the student that we get from DataU, right, to attach and work with them, right? And to me, I think for long run, we still need from a management side, right? Maybe 1 or 2, senior resource that we have from outside, maybe in the next, 2 to 3 years, right? But in this period, we hope, our local talents, where, we work with DataU, be able to work with them, right? And then, groom themselves up, to the, meaning a specialist level, right? And for the next 5 years, right, over 5 years, I think at a time that these people, not only get the what we call the data, analytics skill, but groom themselves with the management, right, the business side, business acumen side, more than just the data analytics, right, to take over the business itself. Okay. That what I think, and I think it's on the job training, where not only the company put focus on just training for them, but for them to work on real, real data, right? Real work, right? That involved with real projects, okay? And with support from expert like the expert in how we have, or the expert from, DataU, where you have programs to train them, right? So I think this will need a collaboration of all angles.
That was amazing, thank you. And I think there were some really key points you mentioned that I just want to kind of re-highlight for our audience. And so some of the things you mentioned were the idea of continued investment in your people. So it's not enough to just hire good talent. You have to continually invest in them in order to get the best out of them and deliver the most long-term value for your organization. So one of the key things you mentioned I thought was really quite interesting was the idea of shadowing and active continued mentoring, if you will, of these talents. So allowing them to shadow an expert, allowing them to see these real world experiences that you mentioned, see how projects are delivered, and then really kind of steep themselves in that commercial experience. You also talked about cross-departmental exposure. So it's not enough to just stick a data engineer in a corner and say, here's a pile of data, go nuts. You want to give them a more broader understanding of what your organization is and give them exposure to different parts of your organization. Because actually sometimes what happens is, a fresh set of eyes, a fresh way of thinking can look at a completely unrelated on paper department and find some really interesting innovations that they can bring to the fore, as we've seen time and time again when you deploy young, eager talent into these kind of large environments. And then finally, you talked about, every business is a data business, right? And so embracing the fact that, for example, I didn't know that a car has more lines of code than Facebook does, right? I mean, it's blown my mind, right? And so as organizations evolve, and we'll come on to Chandy in just a moment and talk about Coca-Cola's work as a classically non-technical business. There are going to be opportunities in every organization to really leverage the value of data to drive, whether it's more revenues, whether it's cost savings, whether it's the reduction of overheads. There's some really interesting opportunities. So Chandy, coming on to you if I can. Coca-Cola is a global brand, right? You operate in geographies and you operate in kind of jurisdictions all over the world, right? And so I'm sure you've seen your fair share of the way things are done in different parts of the world. Thinking more broadly about the public-private sector relationship, but we're all talking about development of Cambodia, development of skills, development of talent for this great nation. As you think about the role that the public sector can play, what actions, initiatives, or even legislations do you think the public sector could undertake to better position Cambodia as we race towards this Industry 4.0 future?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough, by the way, as an HR director for Coca-Cola. It just been 3 months ago. Was a supply chain director who is both running technical and human side now, which is machine and human now. I have so fortunate to be advocate on STEAM's program for Cambodia. Yes, I think for public sector, it's about, I would say, it's about time to really not think outside the box, but outside the buildings, I would say. To check with the private now, where is the direction they are heading. It's about time to overhaul the formal curriculum as well, perhaps, because what had been worked in the last, let's not say 10 or 20 years, but in the last 5 years, maybe not relevant anymore. So I think it's very important for public sector to really make connections between private, in my experience. We didn't do a good job on that part, especially from Cambodia perspective, and it's about time to change, in my view. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Please, Shanghai.
Because this question is quite interesting, right? And I just want to share from Wing perspective, where we have worked with the government a lot, right? So, respond to that question, I think from the public sector side, they should open up and integrate, more with the private sector, right? With the business. What it means is that, like the case in Wing, where we connect with the government agency, right, ministry, a lot in terms of the payment side, right, to disburse fund for the poor people. So this is just one example. If we can integrate more with the government, on the data side, we will have a lot of data, right, open up, and processes will be much easier, right, save a lot of time. And this way, I think private sector should integrate more with the business. Okay. Thank you.
If I can just build on that, Shanghai, that's a really interesting point. And so we were talking before the session about the speed at which the private sector moves compared to the speed at which the public sector moves, right? And so being able to leverage the private sector to unburden the public sector and get some of these great initiatives going is a really powerful kind of combination. And so you mentioned about your kind of dispensing of social funds to the poor, for example, is what Wing is doing. I'm sure there are many private sector organizations on the call right now who are wondering, well, how do I get involved? How do I help the public sector do more? And so can you give any recommendations or any tips or advice to private sector organizations, perhaps some of AmCham, perhaps some of the more broader startups and kind of younger organizations who've got great ideas, who've got the great energy, but don't quite know how to start that conversation with the public sector? How might they approach it?
I think if I remember, from the discussion of our business leader with the public sector, the government side, right, especially on this, poor, meaning the fund for the poor people, right? It starts with the need, right? We need to understand their need as well. The government have need, to disburse the fund to poor people. So with that need, with that challenge, meaning we have millions of people, right, and they disburse to millions of people, poor people across the country. So how do we contribute to that one, right? So if we look at the existing business that we have, we do not, we may not be able to support that, but we think how we tweak, right? If we just doing the, just a normal transfer, money transfer process, we may not be able to do that, but we twist that process, right, to cope with the need. So what I would suggest to maybe private sector or business, how to work or integrate with the government is that see their need, right? See their need. What is what they are struggling with, and then try to maybe change our own process as well. Because in our case, we change our process. We give the government, a system, right, where they can operate themselves. Normally, we operate in-house, right, for the client. But in this case, we share to the government and, integrate the data so that, they be able to send, meaning to share, to transfer the fund to the specific person, right, and using our network. Right? So if we just looking at our business, right, and want the government to just follow our business, we may not be able to do so. And they may not be able to do so as well, because there are certain processes that the government or the public sector need to follow as well. But, twist our process and adapt, with both sides, right, to answer to the challenge that they have, specifically that case to disburse the fund to millions of people across the country. How are we doing that? And I remember that day, our technical teams, our business team have meetings, overnight, because the decisions just come up a few days, and then we need to do it right away. So just get it done. Thank you.
I love that. And I think I really want to kind of drill down that last point you made before I open the same question up to the rest of our panel is just get it done were the last words you used. And I think that's something that I've come to really appreciate about the Cambodian ecosystem, especially for startups and private sector organizations. It is so much easier to start a conversation in a developing nation than it perhaps is in a developed nation, right? And so in the West, there are often gatekeepers upon gatekeepers upon gatekeepers. But as you said, when there's a need, the best thing a private sector organization can do is just respond to that need and get things done. So I really appreciate you ending on that comment. Does anybody else want to add to that question about public-private sector collaborations?
So I really like your point about, understanding the needs of the government, because when we talk about partnership, we want to talk about understanding each other's needs, and that also goes into, business model concept for a lot of private organization as well as understanding your customers' needs. You want to create something that there's a need for it before you start creating products and services. But going back to the collaboration, so what AmCham has been doing as well is we are having sectorial meetups, so based on industries to come together collectively as a voice and talk about the challenges that we have. Our next goal is to utilize that and do advocacy work for our members, but also have that dialogue with the government, right? Have dialogue with the public sector. Say, here's our challenges, and then we're looking for you to tell us your challenges, and how can we collaborate and work together? That's the missing piece, right? My understanding being here for the last 2.5 years in Cambodia is that the public sector, the government, are easy to connect, much easier, to your point, than from a developing country. Easy to connect, they'll listen, and they'll share with you, and they will also, they want to help and they want to collaborate. It's just getting each of us to be at the table at the same time and exploring that opportunity together. And so that's where we want to lend a voice for the members for AmCham. So that is something that we're doing, and I believe that private organizations can leverage associations, chambers such as AmCham and others, if they're looking for help in terms of how can I work with the government, what can we do together to support different ideas and things like that. So look for groups and associations that could help bring not just your voice, but voices are in the same pool, right? To be able to have a dialogue with the public.
So as proud AmCham members, and for those who aren't, I'd highly recommend becoming a part of this wonderful group. You mentioned about the idea of collecting public sector needs and challenges with private sector needs and challenges. Are you formalizing that kind of challenge matchmaking in kind of way? And if you are, tell us about it. If you're not, would you plan to do it? And kind of explore a bit, if you could, for your members and non-members, how you're going about matchmaking those challenges.
So we just started this about 2 months ago, actually 1 month ago. And I believe, like I said, our next step is to bring these challenges that are shared by the industries. For example, our tourist industry, right? Hotels and restaurants. So there's a lot of challenges, and there's been a lot of challenges due to COVID-19. And we brought them together and shared with us what are the challenges they're facing now. Some are obvious and some are not, right? But we want to be able to share that to the government. And that would be the next step, is to share to the government and have them share with us what's their challenge, right? If we go to them and say, we want no quarantine, they're gonna give us their challenge. And from there, I think we could come to a compromise. So that's what we want to do. is to be able to have those challenges at the table and be able to come to a compromise that will work both for the private organizations and also the public.
Can't wait to hear more about it. So thank you for starting that initiative. If I can perhaps come to you, Chandy, again. And so I'm thinking about, in some of our earlier talks, we were looking at the often the aging differences between existing members of organizations and new talent that's coming in. Cambodia has an overarching young dynamic in terms of its population pyramid. If we think about the old guard, let's call them, right? These are guys who have been in organizations and business for some time. To what extent do you think they either hinder or accelerate talent development within organizations?
I guess I'm falling that category right now. Yeah, I mean, I would speak from that perspective. You need to adapt for sure, you need to adapt for that technology change and advancing. So it is very clear, either you adapt to that change or you will left behind. So we keep now seeing because the direction we are heading, we keep seeing the young, fresh graduate, maybe a few years in the workforce start to rise up very quickly, because the demand of work to create value is different, and it's not going to go back. It's only going to that direction, what I'm talking about. So yeah, in short, you need to adapt for that.
Okay, thank you for your insights there. Yoni, I'm gonna move on to you if I can. And so, looking at this from the other side, as you prepare your students to graduate into this new and evolving kind of working world with organizational structures and hierarchies and existing status quos, what advice do you find yourself giving to students? And what advice could you give to employers to help both sides get more from the new talent that's entering the working environment?
Great question. That doesn't have a simple answer. So I'm going to lead with that as a disclaimer. What I find, so I've worked in a very, very open environment. So up until moving to Cambodia over the last year and a half, I haven't, I'm originally from Romania. I lived in the UK for the last 12 years, and then I moved here. So I've experienced a bit of that. Like in Romania, it was quite similar, which was surprising to me. But now, as things have changed, people tend to be a bit more open, so most environments are quite open. So it was a bit of a surprise, and at the beginning, I wasn't even sure what is the best advice to give, right? I don't know. There's so many situations. So I think it depends a lot on. I always tell people, approach it like a case-by-case situation. Try to build relationships in the company, leverage those relationships. Don't come into the company assuming that, okay, I've been trained in the latest skills and oh my God, I'm so great, I know everything. There's always, someone else knows something that you don't know. So encouraging people to what I call humble confidence, to approach everything with humble confidence, right? Don't be too confident in your abilities, but also have that humility to say, okay, this person has been in the business for 10, 15 years, 20 years. I'm sure they have some insights, what I can learn from it. And I would say and also the other thing that we typically do, so we have an array of ranges as well in the trainees. So we have people who've never been in work environments and people who are in their early 30s or even late 30s, and they've experienced, more closed off environments or more open environments. So we typically do sessions where I ask for their advice, because I'm curious to see what are some challenges, what are some situations that they've dealt with, you know, how do you deal with it? They often look at me and say, the boss is always right. This is how I deal with it. So now it has become our inside joke, but we also say, okay, let's think about what can you do, right? Like realistically, what can you do? So again, it's, I would say, case by case, more about understanding the organization culture, understanding what is the value that you can bring, and slowly try to you know, embrace that, open up to new opportunities, have the courage to go and start some conversations, or maybe you don't have the courage to go and start the conversation, but maybe a colleague that has been working there longer than you, and you can, you know, can support you in starting that conversation. And I think for organizations, I would say what I've seen working time and time again is what all of you have said this evening, collaborative environments, right? Working in environments where we are encouraging our staff, we are supporting our staff, and we often say, and this is more like in the Western world, there's no monopoly on good ideas, so good ideas can come from anywhere. So I would encourage organizations who perhaps are more like on the closed off environment side of things to start considering with new environments and new like technologies and new ways of doing things, to maybe adapt to that, like you said, right? If you don't adapt, you're left behind. So that would be my answer. I know it's a bit of a long answer, but maybe
but a very informative one, so thank you.
Okay.
I just want to get a quick time check. We have a few minutes yet, okay. And so I just want to kind of go perhaps round the panel, if I could, and ask a simple question. Well, it's never a simple answer, right?
Yeah.
Simple questions, very simple answers. Starting with you, Ioin, what would you say is perhaps the number one most important training area for Cambodia to focus on as it looks to unlock its future digital kind of opportunities?
Okay, cool. So definitely skills development, and I'm probably going to repeat some of the points that Kim has made earlier in terms of we need to look more specifically. There's no one size fits all approach, and we need to look more at tailored training. At how do we leverage technology to have people train whilst they are at work, or to train for this specific skills gap. And I would also say that we need to look at creating like a roadmap for different industries, right? Because as we've seen, so we've recently partnered with GIZ. We delivered a digital training course for 6 weeks, and this was for people who were working in the tourism industry and they've been affected by COVID. So we were looking at retraining and upskilling them. And what we found was some of these guys have never used Zoom before. They've never done presentations online and things like that, right? So if we're looking at industries like the garment manufacturing and the tourism, then there's specific digital skills that they need to be trained up. If we're looking at other industries, there might be different specific skills and different levels. So I would, yeah, that would be my one thing that became 5 things, basically.
I'll save my comment for what I've just heard from you saying for afterwards. If we can, Kim, perhaps you can answer the same question. The most important area for Cambodia to focus on as we charge towards this digital future.
Okay, thank you so much. I don't think it'll any different. However, just getting people, the workforce, to understand how to use technology and data to better serve the customer, and also to make processes, existing processes, easier and more convenient for the team and for the employees all across function. I think we can start with that and then upskill from there. But first understand what is the available technology out there and how can we use it to leverage in our business? And how can we make our process, use that technology to help better serve our customers? That's one. And then of course, when we look internally, how can we make our existing processes better by using technology? And then I think from there, we can build up multiple upskilling.
Perfect, thank you, Kim. And if we can move on, Chandy, your thoughts, please?
I thought would be, the one thing, it would be mindset, in my view, that you need to watch out your mindset there. Because you believe what you will be. Yes. Therefore, I have seen through in my last 15 years in the workforce. For example, I work with my admin executive who do nothing but paperwork and become a expert in Power BI, for example, and going to upgrade I keep pushing to move into a data scientist level. So because it very powerful, you know, you have no idea about those things, and then you come from there and then you go there, because with the intention to solve the business problems. And I would say she has solved a lot of problems with that learning. So therefore, be careful the mindset you think who you are and you want to stay there. That would be my one thing for the audience who is, especially those who prepare for the workforce. Yeah.
I can see Ioin really enjoyed that response. I certainly enjoyed that response. I think mindset is an incredibly powerful tool and skill to master. Shanghai, your thoughts, my good man?
I think all of the panelists have shared, meaning a lot of area already.
It gets harder as it comes this way.
And yeah, the last one, Mr. Chandy have shared one interesting thing. I would share something similar, right, to mindset, but more specific. I would say we should focus on solution-oriented, kind of skill or ability, right? Meaning, if we focus on the solution, right, meaning it related to mindset as well, then people will go, their way, right? Whether it requires data analytics, right, to solve the problem, whether it requires AIs or automation, right, to solve the problem, they will go that way, right, to get things done, to get things solved, or even it requires, labor skill, right, to get, the problem done. They will get it done, when they have their what we call the solutions, right, oriented mindset or solution oriented skill, ability, right, to solve the problem. And this would be my answer. Thank you.
I really like that. Thank you, Shanghai. I just want to build a little bit on what you said, because there's often a disconnect between, we all know that digital skills are required, but the term digital skills can be quite nebulous, can be quite broad. Even data skills can be quite a broad term. And so we've got just 1 or 2 minutes left. And so I just want to wrap up, if you could, by if you can name some of the key skills. So you talked about solutions-oriented mindsets. What are some of the key activities, the actual things that you would want incoming talent to be able to do? If we just, again, whip around the room real quick, what are the key things? Is it report building? Is it cleaning data? Just if you could really break down some of the things, because I'm sure there's a number of aspiring data talent on this call who are wanting to know about where they should focus their self-learning, where they should focus their attention. What are some of the key tasks that you would like in each of your organizations people to be focusing on?
So for me, again, right, I zoom down from the mindset, right, to a solution one. Now you ask to zoom a little bit down, right? So I would say, yeah, when we say industry 4.0, right? So later on, it will require a lot of, right now automation, but later on we'll move to AI, right? But what is really, right, to support that? Okay, there's, several skill sets that need to be developed, right? One is data analytics, right? Meaning when it comes to AIs, what is in it, right? AI, when we talk about artificial intelligence, it's about data, right? So that will be the area that we need to focus on. And then the what we call meaning the developments, right? The IT development, the programmings, right? So those are the area that, again, right, zooming down from the solutions toward those skills. Okay, so that what I would naming a few, right? The data, analytics, okay, the programmings, right? The developments. Okay, I would say.
Chandy, if I can ask you the same question.
Just to be precise, every day I imagine, can someone, make machine learning work for our business? What does it mean is that we have too much data in our system every day. Can our machine tell us, hey, in the next 3 weeks, because it's human or what the phrase, what is the most selling pack based on the last 10-year history and things like that? Would that weather patterns, too much rain, what is the best SKU to project for that demand? So I wish that, that particular skill is available and make it happen yesterday.
Well, maybe Yoni can help you in the break afterwards. Kim, if we can get your take, please.
Okay, just real quickly, building on top of what I said earlier about, understanding and leveraging technology and the data to better serve the customers, to better make your processes internally more efficient. I think the one skill for me is critical thinking. Yes, if you look at the data, you understand how technology works, but if you can't critically consume it and be able to think of all the different ways that you could leverage it, then it doesn't do any good. We talk about too much data, right? That's true, but if you don't know what to look for and what does it mean, and you can't think critically on those data points, then it doesn't do any good whether you have this amount of data or that amount of data. Or numbers of technologies, right? If we can't think critically, then we don't know what can support our business. So I would say critical thinking skill would probably be the one skill that we individually need to develop and continue to develop if we are to take ourselves into an organization and kind of rise above everyone else in terms of competing for maybe a particular role.
Thank you so much. Yoni, if you could answer and close in the final.
It's like Kim was reading my mind today. So definitely critical thinking and more so storytelling with data as well. So this is actually something that we taught coincidentally to one of the cohorts today. But if I think back in the last year and a half, we've probably trained so far over 7 cohorts. Yeah, we're on our 7 cohort, starting 8 cohort next month. So time and time again, the things that come up and the gaps that we see time and time again are definitely mindset, and more specifically data mindset, how to think like a scientist, which links into problem solving and solution orientated mindset. This literally is something that I've realized in the last few months because we were talking whenever we discuss problem solving. I just noticed that everyone gets stuck into this is the problem. So my thinking always is, oh, how do we move from here? And then I realized, okay, then we need to teach these guys how to develop their problem solving skills, which ties nicely with critical thinking, right? Because if you can't think of solutions, then you won't be able to enhance your critical thinking. If you can't move out of the like a closed off mindset and move towards a more open, or what we teach in here, growth mindset, then we cannot advance, we cannot adapt, we cannot change. So yeah, those would be my 3 ones.
Well, thank you very much. What was really interesting, I want to thank all of our panelists for their time and their insights and their thoughts. Just in that final question, what was really interesting was the spread between the need for both the hard skills and the soft skills, right? So the what we do and the why we do it and the how we do it are just as important. I think that's really coming across in the answers we've seen. And if I can impart a last observation to our audience, these are things that are really worth considering as you plan out your future talent development programs and initiatives. You know, it's not enough to just focus on the hard skills. It's not enough to just focus on individual, as Kim was calling it, event-based learning. It's how do you weave what we call lifelong learning into your organizations? How do you help your staff or your new recruits onboard into your organization understand the why behind what you do? Because understanding why they do something is just as important as understanding what they need to do. And so as you plan out your HR game plans, as you plan out your talent development roadmaps, really consider the nuances between the hard skills development and the need, as we've seen from our panel here, for the soft skills element as well. And so with that, I want to thank our panel of experts for their wonderful time and observations and insights. And I want to thank you all for listening and kind of joining with us. And I believe we'll now be wrapping up, I believe, with a final word from one of our managing partners, Sukna Bo. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll be right back in just a moment.